Good Sunday morning to you. Appreciate you being around for Sunday in the Country. Good old gospel singing here is a program, and on the phone with me should be from the Smoky Mountains, Mr. Sammy Hall. Sammy, are you with us?
Yep.
Good morning. Appreciate.
Good morning to you. Is it raining there?
It is. It is drizzling here this morning, Sammy, out here near the Chesapeake Bay of Virginia. And of course, you're in the Smoky Mountains.
And yeah. In fact, I can look out every morning and watch the sunrise across them.
It's now you've been living in that part of the world for a long time, haven't you?
Yeah. We moved here from Florida back when my sisters and my brother-in-law were traveling with me at the time, right after I came out of rock and roll back in the late 60s, early 70s, and we've been here ever since. It's a beautiful place.
Let's talk about that, the rock and roll world. A lot of folks don't know the story of Sammy Hall. You haven't been in the mainstream for a number of years. You've been doing a lot of different things, still singing, and we'll talk about that as well. But the Bird Watchers are one of the groups you're with. Tell the folks listening some of the things that you did in the rock and roll world and what happened to change your life.
Well, rock and roll for me in the beginning. I quit school and like coming out of the 10th grade and got my first group together down in South Florida and was very fortunate at the time. I write songs. God gave me the talent, but for a while there I was using it for something other than that. But my first tour actually was like a 7-week tour with the Beach Boys, and I was doing a warm-up act for them, but it went quite well for us, and from there I went on to join the Bird Watchers, and we toured with a lot of groups all over the world at that time, and also was on American Bandstand, Dick Clark, and where the action is. And things are just look like it couldn't have been any better. But as anybody knows, it was grew up in the '60s. Drugs were part of the culture. In fact, they were a big part of the culture. And I was one to always do anything that anybody put in front of me, especially if I thought it was going to make me feel different or feel good. But so I did, and 4 or 5 years through those years brought me down to reality, and after a couple suicide attempts and really in bad shape, I found Christ for once and for all.
And you immediately still want to use your music for Him, and you started singing sometime after that with your sisters.
Yes, I did. In fact, we had always sung, it was kind of a family ordeal, like a lot of families. My dad and mom, very Christ-oriented people and church-going people. But my two sisters, we'd always get together every time a family gathering at that time, and through my upbringing, Grand Ole Opry, and I'd play like Marty Robbins or Hank Williams, and sing those songs, come out behind the door with a broom in my hand, and act like I was a country star on Grand Ole Opry. And I told my dad that at 5, 6 years old I was going to be on the Grand Ole Opry one day, and he kind of laughed it off, but then again I kind of thought he realized that I wasn't joking. And I've been fortunate enough to been on the Grand Ole Opry a few times in my career, and those kind of things are exciting. But it was just at 21 years old, after 2 suicide attempts, like I said, and right at the bottom of my ladder, I had something to hold on to, and the only thing I had to hold on to was what my mom and dad had brought me up on, and that was that God was real, and I remember Mom always telling me, son, you need to use your talents for God, and I didn't believe it at that time, but I know it today, and I'm glad and just excited that Christ came into my life at an early age, that I hadn't just ruined everything in my life, and I've lived that dream out there, going into churches and schools, a lot of schools, thousands of schools all over the world, telling kids that drugs are not the way, that Christ is the way, He's the real way.
I remember having been with you in some of those services in the 70s, particularly Patrick Henry High School near Ashland. Remember you going there for an assembly program. And, of course, your program is a little bit different from a church or something when you go into the school situation. But, I remember very well that you were one of the first, if not the first one I know of, to use video and visual effects in your concerts to make it more effective.
That was definitely brought on by a vision from God, and it was something that really brought it home to kids of all ages in the schools and churches. And we did all the effects with explosions and smoke and mirror balls. And what I tried to do, Reggie, is bring over some of the stuff that Satan had taught me to use all those years, but nothing that was off color or anything, but just something to dramatize the message that I was trying to bring to those young people. And it worked quite well, and we could always take, I remember back then it was 16 millimeter, though. There was no such thing as video cams and that kind of thing. And I recall sitting up all night sometimes and splicing those 16 millimeter films and footage together with myself and cutting here and cutting there. And anybody who's ever done that knows that's not the easiest thing to do.
No, it's not. I've seen people do the same thing in the recording studio with a quarter-inch tape, too.
I've had them do that to my songs before.
Sammy, I think the first time I ever saw you was 1972. I was 17. It was in Salem, Virginia, just outside of Roanoke. We had gone there to see the Oak Ridge Boys, and Richard Sturban had just joined them. Joe Bonzo was not with them yet.
Very good friends of mine.
And I know you don't know the Oaks. You know the Oaks very well. And of course, you were on their publishing company for a number of years on Silverline, and a number of your songs that you wrote were on that particular publishing company.
In fact, I wrote a song that was #1 for them, "Jesus, the Man for the Hour."
And I just played a little bit of theirs and played all of yours a few minutes ago. And one of my favorite songs of all time is "Jesus is the Man for the Hour." Great tune. It has always been a great tune. But that night, the Oak Ridge Boys, and when I do see them, and I get with them but once a year, we, from time to time, and only but once every 5 or 6 years, we talk about that particular night because the guys remember it so well because the gentleman who just passed away recently that night was also on the program, Jim Hamill.
Right.
And Jim Hamill had been a former Oak Ridge Boy member for a very short period of time, but this wasn't why he did this. But back then there was a lot of difference in gospel music, and people were not accepting the longer hair and all the instruments and all the stuff of pushing the envelope and bringing in a whole new segment of people. And I was 17. All that appealed to me. That's what I liked about the Oak Ridge Boys is they were different. That's what I liked about Sammy Hall because everything was so different because you had eventually had a full band and just a wonderful sound, a progressive sound, so much different, as did the Oaks. And yours was even more progressive than theirs was because of reaching a younger audience even then. But they still talk about that night when Jim Hamill stood on the stage and he asked people to walk out on the Oak Ridge Boys, but to stay to listen to you because you were the only person he believed in with long hair. I never forget that night. And then you have them. They never forgot it either.
Yeah, at that time, as you know, there was no such thing as having drums, especially in a church.
Oh, no, sir.
And really anything electric.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, I was so hard pressed, to look at those things and say, my goodness, these things are being used by Satan out there, and there's definitely a way they can be used for God.
Yes.
And some of the people listening right now might not understand, how things were back then. But I got canceled out a lot of things just for using drums back then in a church, and I know that my drummer was just unbelievable back then. Him and
was that Mike? Was Mike Cain playing drums for you back then?
Mike Cain. They were him and my bass player were out of a group Blackfoot, quite a big.
They were a big rock and roll group.
Big rock and roll band and everything, and they came with me. Lenny had some problems with his heart, and Mike had some problems with his mind.
And that's Lanny.
And they came
Lanny
with me
Sadler. Lanny, his last name was Sadler or something, wasn't it?
Do what?
Lanny's last name was Sadler or something.
Lenny Sadler, yes. They were out of Reedsville, North Carolina.
And isn't he a Methodist minister now?
Yes, he is. In fact, I was at his church not too long ago, and he's got a group together, and they're traveling again too, and doing some good work for God out there too. And I'm just glad to. I know that my bus driver, my next door neighbor, David Alvey, he left me and started driving for Amy Grant.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that she was sitting up with him one morning. They were traveling one city to the next, and it was about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and she came up and was talking, and he was talking about the 2 or 3 years that he had, 4 or 5 years he had traveled with me, and said she made a statement to him that which I felt was quite a compliment coming from Amy Grant, and said that, if it hadn't been for Sammy Hall and people like him, there would have never been a place really for me. He kind of opened up.
You did,
and if that's what I did, I'm glad I had that part in the world of music, especially God's music.
Well, you really made an impact upon this 17-year-old the first time I saw you, and I remember it. I'm a lot more than 17 now, and by the way, so
we all are.
Yeah, we so are. Let me ask you this question. We'll play a song, and then we'll visit a little bit more afterwards. If there was one song that could identify you with, one song, one Sammy Hall song, you could pick out over the years that would be your signature song, so to speak, what would be the one or two songs you would pick?
Well, the first song that was number one for me after I came out of rock and roll was a song that still to this day I do it every. In fact, I usually end it with that and another one for invitation, and that was my testimony at the time because of the world I'd been in. That was a song called "Now I've Everything."
Mm-hmm.
And the Simon and Garfunkel got me my first job down in South Florida, and they had written a song sitting in a Baptist church years later that I recorded and kind of just changed a couple words to it, and that was "Bridge Over Troubled Waters." And
indeed, a classic.
That was a sermon that was being preached there. Jesus is the bridge over troubled waters, and wow, what a statement! And that's the reason I recorded that one. So those two songs I continue to do. I wrote one, but the other I didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'd be nice to have written "Bridge Over Troubled Water," wouldn't it?
Oh yeah.
Royalties, okay. Thank you. But indeed, two songs I remember well. Let's back a couple 3 years ago. You went back in the studio, and you went down to Michael Sykes' place, and the title of the project is "Rewriting the Story," and you recut "Now of Everything." So, Sammy, let's share that with the audience, and then we'll visit just a little bit more. So here's Sammy Hall with an updated version of a song he's done it many times, a song that still speaks to me, and I'm sure you as well. "Now I Have Everything."
I had nothing but heartaches and troubles. I was seeking for fortune and fame. I had nothing but doubts and confusion. But now I have everything. I have everything I need to make me happy. Everything.
Sammy Hall with "Now I Have Everything," and recut after many years. And Sammy, that is one of your more popular songs, and one that people recognize you by.
Well, I'm kind of glad because of the words. That says it all.
And great tune. Now,
Reggie, can we? I'd like to hear from some people out there too. I know you'd mentioned last night.
Yes, indeed.
It's beautiful what email and websites do for us today.
Yeah, mention your website if you would.
Is it okay to give?
Oh, yes, indeed.
My,
go ahead.
My email and website.
Yeah, you give your email address, or I will. Either one.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm here. Sammy, you there? Okay. I pushed the button the wrong way.
I've done that before.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, all of us working sound pushed a lot of buttons the wrong way. But your internet website is www.sammyhall.com. And, folks, if you want to drop Sammy an email, is it Sammy@sammyhall.com?
Sammy@sammyhall.com, right.
That's.
And I'd love to hear from. Every day I get up and there's just lots of people that I've met over the past that are just writing me and saying, "Do you remember the time in Minnesota, or remember the time out there in Montana? You remember the time in Dallas, Texas?" And it's just a lot of fun to read the email, and I'm still traveling and love to come to some churches up your way.
That'd be great. If folks would be interested, it'd be great to work that out.
The minister's listening, and or someone that and I can come. I don't have a whole group with me, but still got the message and the message in my heart. But,
well, our mutual friend Frank Mills does a lot of traveling with you, playing and singing. And Frank, of course, has been in this area with the Hoppers. Hoppers have been here probably 5-7 times over the years, and real good friends of mine. And Frank and you know each other pretty well.
Oh yeah, he plays bass for me, and he also you mentioned the Hoppers. I'm doing a project right now, and Dean Hopper, and I'm doing it with him up at their studio in North Carolina, and I've got 3 or 4 cuts right now, and we're gonna finish that also. I'm excited about that.
Oh, that's wonderful. They got a nice studio over there, and
called the Farm, I think.
The Farmhouse.
Yeah.
And it's their third studio. One of them they lost by flood. One they lost by fire. I don't know what's going to happen this next one, but their studio has been very biblical. But they do a lot of their vocals there. They do for their own projects, and
well, it's a nice studio. Nice. I know that Claude come down most of the time that I was there doing the stuff that I was. It's just a lot of fun. It's this laid back, real easy going, and just exciting.
Yeah, Claude and I spoke this week. When the phone rings about 11:45 or 12 during the week, it's Claude. And usually he calls my cell phone, but this week he called my home phone, and because my cell phone was not on me. And but they're special people. I've known them but as long as I've known you in the Oaks and all, and because I've known them very, very well. The history of "Here I Am" was a song I found for them and took it to them, and he went #1. So we've been very blessed to have known them, and I'm really excited. Their newest DVD, they gave me some credits in that on their newest DVDs. So kind of excited about that, and that's kind of fun. And of course, this is their 50th anniversary, and their book is out, and I'm in that book a couple times. So it's kind of fun knowing those folks over the years, and they've indeed been laborers.
We give credit where credit's due.
Yes, indeed. We give the Lord the credit because
exactly.
And He has indeed blessed me of knowing a lot of wonderful people like yourself. Sammy, if a young person is listening this morning, even an older person, and you were addicted to drugs and a slave of that environment, and if this morning they or a loved one is dealing with that, what would you tell them?
Well, it's a monster, really is, and it don't start out that way. Especially for you, when you're young, you think you're invincible. There's nothing ever going to happen to you. There's just death is something that don't really enter your mind. But I've had quite a few friends, obviously that they're no longer around, and a lot of them, most of my friends, especially from the 60s and 70s, are is because of drugs or alcohol that killed them and was their demise. The most important thing and the message I give is stay away from it and don't start it, because, like I say, it's a monster. It creeps up on you and sneaks up on you. But going back to the basics, just that what's taught out of that old family Bible that used to lay in a lot of our living rooms on the coffee table or something. The message in that is all true, and my mom and dad are gone now, but it was that message that Mom and Dad instilled in my heart, and it's so often today we think of it as old-fashioned, but man, there's nothing newer than the message of Christ dying for our sins, and that message today is in our culture, in the culture war of secularism, is just really trying to destroy a lot of that, but truth will come out dominant every time. And just getting back to that the message that Christ is the answer, and He's the answer for, especially for the culture of this time, that a lot of people want us to go with the message of if it feels good, do it. And I went that way and found out that it wasn't where it was at. But just hang in there to the probably the message is a lot of these young people are hearing at home, and sometimes don't want to accept, but that God is the answer. He's the way, the truth, and the life.
Train up a child when he is young, and when he is old, he shall not depart from it.
Right.
And that's so true. And the foundation that a lot of moms and dads lay with their youngsters. You know, when I grew up, that wasn't a choice whether I went to church on Sunday mornings or not. It wasn't an option.
It wasn't me either.
And the world's changed, though, but that's not. I'm not saying it's for the better either. The world's changed. Parents give youngsters and young people a lot more decisions than I had. I'm glad in a lot of situations I didn't have decisions to make. It's a lot easier to take the wide road instead of taking the narrow road. A lot.
Well, that's biblical too.
No doubt about that. Well, Sammy, I tell you what, we're going to play a song by you. I'm going to let you set it up because it's a song that's never been released. It's a Christmas song, and as I said a few minutes ago, Sammy, you played your song, Jesus is the man for the hour, and then I said, and the reason for the season. And my wife and I sang this past week at a program. We also set sound in Richmond, and we were taking stuff out, and a bunch of guys were loading up a big old truck, and what kind of music you play? I said, gospel music. And the guy looked at me and said, his buddy, and says, well, be careful around here. Lightning will strike this man. He ain't too close to that kind of music. And I looked at him. I said, you know what? We're going to sing Christmas music, and that's the purest form of gospel music there is. And
exactly.
And it starts with Christ. And I said, you know what? It's not Santa Mus. It's Christmas. And they looked at me and said, I hadn't thought about that. And I'm not sure they had, quite frankly. But this song you recorded many, many years ago.
Yes, I did. And it's been played quite a bit on different, in the country formats in a lot of stations around Christmas time. But like I say, I've never released it. But I'd like to also interject here that if someone would like to, after they hear this, would like to get a copy of it or whatever, they can email me or go to the website, and then I think it's possible to download that if they'd like to do that.
You have a store on your website, www.sammyhall.com, and there's a store on there with a number of items you can buy, including this latest album we've been playing songs from.
And all that the funds from that, Reggie, still goes to our ministries and the schools and the ministries and the churches.
Fantastic. Well, this song you recorded years ago, did Gary Paxton produce this one?
Yes, he did.
And this goes back a while, but it's a song that entitled We've Taken the Christ Out of Christmas. Is that correct? Is that the correct title?
Yes, it is. And it's actually probably more up to date right now than it was then. Every day brings us closer to that great homecoming in the sky, but it's amazing just how far out that it seems like people are going to go out. It seems like it never amazes me from one day to the next what we see on TV, what we see here in the news, or what's going on, because it just. But then in the Bible says, except that He shortened those days that for even the elect's sake, you know. And we're in for some pretty rough times, but I tell you what, God is more powerful than all of it.
Amen. Sammy, hang on. I'll speak to you off the air. And here's Sammy Hall with a Christmas tune. We've taken the Christ out of Christmas. River Country 100.9, Sammy Hall with the Christmas song, We've Taken the Christ out of Christmas. Good having Sammy as a guest this morning. Appreciate that so much. You can visit him on his website, www.sammyhall.com. We'll be back after this.
The Marks Bristow Funeral Home in Tappahannock knows talk.